Hey guys, disembodied voice of Atrioc here, and I'm a little sick, so if I sound nasally, deal with it. Listen, about a month and a half ago, I posted a clip of the Patreon bonus episode of Lemonade Stand, and it was just a chunk of the Patreon episode that I really liked. It was a conversation that I thought was kind of crackling and interesting, and I enjoyed it, and I didn't want it to only be confined to the people that are on the Patreon. This happened again recently. In the most recent episode of the Patreon, it's an hour long. I really like the whole thing, but there's like a 15-minute chunk where I think we discuss why we're generally in favor of higher taxes on the wealthy. And I thought the conversation was quite good. I don't know. I really enjoyed hearing the perspectives and just discussing that idea because it's not something that gets discussed a lot, I think, in a normal, non-heated way. I wanted to share this clip again from the Patreon. I'm sorry, Patreon subscribers. I keep stealing your hard paid for content, but but I want to see some wider Big A opinions. And if you'd like to watch the full hour-long episode, of course, go to patreon.com/lemonade stand. I highly recommend it. I think it was a really good one. There's a new bonus hour episode every week, or if not, just check out the full podcast. But enough shilling. I actually just want to hear your thoughts on this, and so I'm going to jump over to the actual clip right now. Thanks for watching.
If you look at the right one, though, there's so much there that maybe some of it will kind of trickle down to the ones on the left.
I see what he's going.
Okay, there has got to be what. So I don't know enough about economic theory. What is the argument for this? Because certainly in left leaning circles, the narrative around this type of thing is always tax cuts don't help, trickle down economics don't work. This is just making the rich richer. There has to be an argument for this, right?
Yeah.
What is the benefit that this will? Presumably there is some benefit. It's just not going to. I mean, obviously, just giving people a bunch of money that's cool if they go spend it or whatnot. What is the argument here?
The idea is that wealthy people that accumulate money, if you tax them less and allow them to save more, anything that is saved will be appealing to invest, and because they don't want to just hold their money as cash, they want to put their money into things that produce a return. So they want to invest the money into businesses or assets, or basically the idea is anything that might help the economy grow more. But in practice, having tried this approach of cutting taxes for the better part of 50 years, 50 years now, it doesn't really work that way. There's like a little truth to it in like short-term output, but there is not a truth to it in the long term.
So how do you measure that? Because our economy has grown vastly over the last couple decades, right? So how do you not argue that that's in part because of this tax cut process?
Okay, feel free to jump in if you feel like you can explain this better. My understanding is that the money given to these people is given to these people. It's depending on how you view taxes. The money that they have, they choose to put into assets that does not produce what's called velocity in the economy. So like the velocity of money is the measurement of how much that money moves around within the system. Wealth over time consolidates, and wealthy people will put a lot of that money into like more stagnant long-term things rather into projects that are riskier and have more payoff for average people. So the idea behind the investment theory, or like savings equals investment theory, is that things like businesses will get invested into and they will hire more people and create more jobs, and that is the way that money gets back to people. It gets back to people because they get jobs out of the investment. And then they have that money to spend on the goods and the things in their life, which strengthens the economy.
But in practice, it's pooling into these lower velocity blobs from rich folks. Okay.
One thing you can look at that kind of measures this is if you look at the number of companies that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange, like over time, the number has I think the number or the amount of money that's in the top 500 companies or something, the money is consolidating. It's not moving around and spreading out into a bunch of new businesses and ventures. It is slowly accumulating in fewer and fewer people's hands. And they just control more and more of the money and hold it in longer and longer term things. And
Yeah, or even just how the S&P 500, like most of the value is in the
Top 7, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that consolidation has only exponentially increased over time. And this scales very directly with the cuts on taxes at the top income brackets. And this is not an American phenomena. You can look at in general, the world's Western economies have trended in the direction since like the 70s of lowering taxes on the rich in the hopes of relieving economic stagnation through this theory. And it hasn't really worked. There was like short-term benefit within that period of time. Every time, I think you see like short-term economic boosts, especially in the performance of like assets like the stock market,
Right.
in the wake of lowering taxes, but you don't see significant economic benefits to average workers or like increases in wages. And this idea that there is truth in the idea that freedom of investment allows individual people to work and become wealthier than they would in like, I don't know, like feudalism. But when you start eliminating these like guardrails, these like tax guardrails, and don't tax the rich as heavily, it's not. I think a really important thing about taxes is it's not actually about revenue a lot of the time. It's about keeping like the game and the system fair. You're not taxing the people, the wealthiest people at, in the 50s, we were at like a top end 90% marginal rate on the wealthiest people in the US. That isn't because of the tax revenue necessarily. It's because you can see economic benefit across society by making sure that wealth does not accumulate in the top like echelon of people. Wealth inequality is like bad for the game of economics. It's not just about tax revenue and like getting to use that money.
Yeah. I just want to give like real world examples because I agree with everything you said. But I just want to say, like, if you are somebody on that chart, for example, who makes $25,000 a year and you get a $500 tax cut, so you have $500 more to spend. Someone at that income level will guaranteed spend that. You're going to get your daughter a haircut, not cut at home. And that now the barber has extra money that he can go send his daughter to dance recital. Or what, and that person now can open a dance recital studio, and like that money will get spent because people at that level of income do not have excess money to save. But someone who has $5 million, who gets any incremental extra money from taxes, is usually not consuming more with that. What they are doing is they're parking it in real estate or they're parking it in assets, usually the same assets they already own. So if I have 1 million shares of Google, I'll get 1.5 million. I'll buy a little bit more. And that,
even at my level,
Yeah.
like I'm not I don't have millions of dollars, but like I now make a lot more than I need to live, and my lifestyle doesn't change at all. I just dump it in
100%.
S&P 500.
if we get tax breaks, we are not spending more.
Yeah, nothing's
realistically.
and the S&P 500, like those companies aren't changing what they're
So-
doing because they got another,
Exactly.
$1,000 from me.
So
or
nobody's
whatever.
building a business off our increased spending from this. We're just consolidating wealth and more
Yes.
assets.
There's a really good example. I think it's an interview with Mark Cuban, and he gives the example of like, I'm wearing jeans right now. I can only buy so many pairs of jeans. But if you give that money out to regular people, then they just spend that money on the things they live on.
Yeah.
I had the exact same thought that you just said, is to be totally candid, this year, I became a millionaire. Like this year. And I'm
I'm for the people.
and I want to be honest with the
I'll
the
volunteer
audience
this.
about it.
That's awesome.
And it just like literally is just happened as of very, very recently. And I think about the stuff that I spend my money on at like my tier of income. And like there are tiny things in my, like I do have like charitable contributions that I do. And I do have things in my day-to-day life that I buy for like living or like just products that I'm interested in that like, but on large, I'm like saving my money and putting them into assets because my career's in content creation.
And I
I
assume
know,
mostly long-term assets. Like
yeah, exactly. And I know
You're
my
not
CSGO
investing.
knives.
Yeah.
oh my,
You're probably not, investing into the local bakery or something. Like,
Crypto, CSGO knives, just the big ones.
and
Metaverse apartments.
Don't that's where most of my money is going now. And I am not as I've like planned it out. I think my content career is going to end and I'm not like set for life. But a lot of what I'm doing right now is like putting my money in investments to like make sure that I'm secure for the rest of my future. And that's basically it. And I think I think what is wild to me is for a long time, and this is Ludwig. Ludwig has a company and a lot of operating expenses and a lot of things that go along with this. But Ludwig makes quite a bit more money than I do. And then there are people that I have met that are on that next tier, that kind of like 9-figure tier. I don't know if I've ever met a billionaire, but maybe Susan Wojcicki.
Oh yeah, maybe.
But
probably not actually.
Where I have so much freedom with the amount of money that I make. I'm very, very lucky. And the amount of like tiers there are above me, and that money just goes into these long-term assets, sit there.
You ever seen Bill Gates' portfolio? It radicalized me. It showed me what he owns. It's like, the list is, you can just pages long, and it's like $500 million of McDonald's, $500 million of IBM, $500 million of Nike, 500 million. It goes through all of these iconic American companies. He just casually owns $500 million in all of them. It goes for pages. When you read that, it's like, any one of those individual lines is a wealth of dynasties. You know, it's like familial wealth for generations. He just owns all this. And he's not even, I think top 5 anymore, but you're saying these.
But I think something that's really important with this is like when we're talking about income taxes or we're talking about things like estate taxes or wealth taxes. Again, I want to stress again, I actually think people focus often on the revenue part. Like when we were talking about medical costs on the AI medicine episode, we were talking about what a difference, the actual cost difference in the negotiating down of Medicare would be. Right. We talked about it today as well, but I don't think we talked about the exact amount, like the total amount it would shave down. And when we were talking about how that would make a way bigger difference than like raising taxes on taking all of the rich people's money. That would be a way more significant amount. So I agree with that, but taxing the rich and levying these taxes like wealth and estate taxes on people, levying these taxes on me at even at my level. The point of these things is so that money is taken away from me and the people who are way, way richer than me and taken out of their hands and put back into the system of like regular people that use it to like make the economy actually grow and function and regular day-to-day life getting better for the average person. Like one thing you talk a lot about with estate taxes is, you know what? If I succeed within the system and I create a really unique idea or a really unique business, and then I become pretty wealthy because of that, you can make an argument that I did deserve that. I think that is something that I think is important. But when my kids get $10 million for doing nothing and just existing, and then they get to roll that 10 million up to 50 million because they had the money to invest, and then that 50 million starts changing regulatory laws around telecom, it's all of a sudden the whole thing's gotten out of hand. Like that's not what it's about anymore. And the taxes are about keeping the game fair. They're not just about taking money away and raising revenue.
Starting to sound like a socialist over there.
And I know I'm like repeating myself, but I think that specific example with the state.
No. Those are good examples. This is one where like
I want to jump on that just real quick because I think this is something I really am like been trying for months to get the words on, and I'm going to try it again because I bring this up a lot on my stream. The idea that something like that is socialism, we say it as a joke, but I think some people think that, and I just want to be so clear that like we had this in America when we were probably you could even say more successful capitalistically. Like this is when we had the biggest company. We had McDonald's blowing up over the world. We had Blue Jeans and Hollywood and everything. Like this is like 50s, 60s, 70s. We had really high tax rates on the rich. It wasn't some crazy, it was like we were in the middle of the Cold War against the common. It's not unthinkable or absurd or anti-business to have a progressive tax rate that just takes more from people that have more. It's not crazy. We've done it. This is when, by the way, we had the biggest middle class. This is when we had the most competitive companies worldwide. This is when people felt most trust in their institutions, like judicial system, schools. This is like, I'm not saying everything was about those decades were perfect, but like they were really anomalously good in all of human history. We've never had that flat of an inequality growth line as long as we did, which is like 30 years of inequality not increasing and people feeling good about their lives and feel like they're better than their parents. And I think a large part of it was because we had, you know, some stable union membership and we had high taxes on the rich. And by the way, people talk about the rich avoided these taxes, and many of them did. But what's funny is they avoided these taxes by putting them into businesses. So ironically, by like cutting their taxes so they would make more businesses, they did the exact opposite. They put it into assets.
We put loopholes. It's like, if you invest into a local franchise in your town, we're not going to go that hard on you. And it's like, that would be great, dude.
That would
Fucking
be
do
great.
that.
That's what they did. Like they would find many ways to avoid taxes by starting businesses and hiring people and like having their money compound in that way. But instead they can just compound it by buying art and assets and gold and